are creating beyond calculation, beyond politics, beyond the big two. Welcome, Silverliners, to the wonderful world of Wednesday Wham. I'm your host, Dean Zachary, and I'm joined tonight by, wow, boys, looks like a skeleton crew. We've got the Superior Skeptic, Aaron Humphreys. We have Rob Davis, the Paragon of Pencils, and we have one of the Wizards of Wordplay. We have Rory Boyle with us tonight. Hi, how's everybody doing tonight? You guys doing good?
So grand.
So far,
so good. Wow, the enthusiasm just oozes on screen. We're gonna talk ooze.
Dean, whatever. I'm doing great.
I know.
You wanted me to talk about some stuff?
I guess Grandpa Simpson said it best when he said, "What's my motivation?" That's pretty much. Actually, he said, "Where's my medication?" But you get the point. Same thing. Yeah, but what we're going to talk about tonight is motivation, and I don't want to turn it into a judgmental thing, or like I work harder than this person or that. I really want to get down to the level of what motivates us to do what we do, and then our daily sort of schedule to be productive and get things done, whether it's organic and unstructured like Aaron's probably is, or whether it's structured and where you have like a set schedule or whatever. It doesn't really matter. We're gonna discuss what works for each of us and how the work gets done, because I don't know about you guys, but I have a lot of friends and colleagues.
You don't have any friends, Dean. Quit lying.
Well, they pretend to be. Just from my benefit.
He has three
annual payments.
I have three right here, so I don't need those guys anymore. I've got you guys now. But they tell me sometimes, I want to do this, and then I've got this screenplay to do that, and then I've got this mini series I wrote, and I've got this novel I wrote, and then I've got this and that I wrote. And it's like, well, do, don't talk, just do. So I want to get down to what gets us to sit down and create. And I want to start as I sometimes do with Aaron, because that often inspires more conversation and more
because they say stupid stuff. Because Aaron opened his big mouth and we can all read on him.
Right.
I'm just going to wait till you say two things, and then, actually.
I know.
Actually, no. So, Aaron, tell us about a typical day in Aaron's world, the PG-13 version, and what you do every day. And then I work on this, and then I work on that, and then, what do you expect of your creative productivity of the day? Do you meet that every day, and how do you go about getting that accomplished?
Well, usually I set small goals, and I tried to tell this to another artist who was looking at making a graphic novel. I'm like, break it down. I'm like, don't focus on making the whole thing at once. It overwhelms you. So when I was making Godlings, I would focus on making 3 pages at a time. I just focus on those 3 pages because that's easy. And then of course, if you keep doing that over time, you have a big comic. I usually set small goals and then get them done. I usually start working about 6-7 o'clock at night and then finish up around 4 in the morning stuff. And that's client work, and then comic work and all of that stuff.
Do you break it up? So when you say client work, for those people who aren't really in the business, you're talking about freelance paid work from individual clients.
I do a lot of motion graphic stuff like that.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. And so you get that done. A lot of artists, like I used to do this too, I would get that done first, get the paying work done first, and then start on the comic work.
Yeah, usually what I do. And anymore, I usually give myself an hour and a half at the end of the night to work on my own stuff, regardless of something. Either I'm writing another comic, so either I'd write on the script I'm doing, if I have another scene in mind, or I've been drawing on this. I think you saw the Beachhead one. I've been just picking at that one as I go along. Stuff like that. I try not to draw on the obsoletes as much, because Roland's a punk, and that guy doesn't deserve any help at all. So he's last on my list. Talk about a demotivational project working for Roland.
Oh man, wow! Can't wait for him to review this one.
He's about to pop in here in 3.
Yeah, he will pop in
Great.
here any second now.
I know he's gonna. I waited.
and
This is always doing that. I guess I'm kind of like in a way baiting him to see if he'll jump up, and be like, "You punk," and just start like going.
I know, like jump in.
Waiting
Welcome,
for off-screen Crozier to come hook you off.
Yeah.
Oh, Barb, you made it.
Barb.
Oh my
Yay.
God. Yeah, we didn't have internet, phone,
Whoa.
or TV for 9 hours today. And you would
Oh
think,
my word!
yes,
You were in the 19th century.
Oh goodness.
it's first world problems. I tell you, I had to rely on audiobooks and radio. Oh my
Ooh.
God.
Oh wow!
Yeah.
What to do? What to do?
Oh
What to
man!
do?
Had to break out the rotary phone just in case.
Well,
I know.
fortunately, it doesn't stop Procreate because you
Correct.
download the art onto your iPad. So I was
Oh.
able to keep plugging
Oh,
away.
that's good.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
good.
for you.
And
Well,
of
Barb,
course-
you're gonna go ahead.
I said, and of course, the very first phone call we got after service came up just like 5 minutes ago, was a spam call.
Of course.
Yep.
I got
course.
a bunch of those today. They must be. This must be the time of the month where they're hitting everybody.
Yeah,
Yeah.
'Cause I got
It's the
like
end of the
4
End
month.
of the month.
today.
Gotta make quota.
Yeah.
Gotta make
Oh,
quota.
man.
Gotta hit so many people. Yeah, I got
Not
one
at
today
my
as
house.
well.
They're not.
Well, Barb, you made it in just in time. We had just started, and I sort of set the table. And you know from the messages I sent you what we're going to talk about. But just we're talking with Aaron about his schedule for the day. Yes, he actually does do things
After I cure cancer and solve world peace.
after he cures cancer,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And we were talking about work schedule and when the most productive time of day, and whether he puts his paying work before the comics and how much time it takes and so on. And what we've gotten so far is that he doesn't care. Just whenever he feels like it, he'll sit down and doodle a little bit for an hour, and then if he gets something done, great. If not, he goes back to video games. No, that's not
That's pretty much
he
it.
actually, he's a night owl. Definitely works from midnight to 4 or to what?
Oh,
7,
like at 7
to 4,
o'clock to like 4 in the
7
morning.
to 4.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh my God.
And you do your freelance work first. Get that out of the way. And
then whatever I have left over.
Are you working for? You don't have to tell us their name, but are you working for like a video game development company? You're working for an advertising
No, there's a
agency?
gentleman.
What?
There's a gentleman I met up in northern Alaska who I do stuff with, and I've been finding some projects on Upwork and stuff that are kind of fun to do. So I've been doing those.
Well, I understand
And
you can't
writing
talk about
stuff.
the Chinese work and the Russian work, but the other stuff.
Yeah. I can't talk about that communist work I do. That's right.
Yeah.
Right.
The wealthy
Right before
Tsar
the
of
4th of July.
Kazakhstan.
Before the
Wait,
4th of July.
can you send some of that my way too, please?
Yeah.
So I'm worried about you guys now. Okay, so like
You're using an awful lot
When
of
you-
red. I don't.
when
I
you
know.
when you start.
I mean, the guy who
are
said
you-
he's worried about us has a red Silverline shirt in the back.
That's
I mean,
right,
I'm sure if you
that's
turn
right.
that around, it would see the hammer and sickle, right?
So are you doing primarily concept work, or are you doing finished stuff? And when you say graphics, you were talking about motion graphics. Is that the
Yeah.
type of thing that you see, like sometimes in advertisements, you see
Yeah.
rotating copy or flying titling and that
Well,
sort of
one
thing?
thing I'm doing now is we're redesigning a character in Illustrator. So most of my client work is done in Illustrator, and I have to redesign him and set him up to be rigged to be animated. So
Got it.
I'm setting up
Got it.
different sims. So I do a lot, and then I do storyboarding too when I do motion graphics. And then I also, I set up basically like images in Illustrator to be animated.
Right.
By the
Okay.
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 That makes sense.
All right.
That's
Makes a lot of sense.
That's the short version.
answer.
Yeah.
Agent Cub says money is my motivation, and that's interesting. I want to spin off that for a moment and just get deep into this. A lot of people say that, and yet if you want to make money, art is not necessarily the business you want to get into make. So there has to be
right.
there has to be some sort of affection for what you're doing and the process and the drawing and all that. So Aaron, would you say what is that driving motivation? Because I usually look at it as obviously the money, the payoff, the fan recognition and peer recognition. Some people have a combination of those. Talk to us a little bit about those three elements and how they work.
I don't know. Well, it's not really money per se. I don't know. I just remember George Carlin talking about motivation. Every time I hear it, I always think of him.
That doesn't surprise me. It's hilarious.
He's like, I never understood motivation. He's like, I never understood motivational tapes or any of that. He's like, you either want to do something or you don't. What's the big mystery? And I'm like, and that's literally how I think of motivation. It's like, if you don't want to do it, then you don't want to do it. If you do want to do it, then
it comes from this internal drive to create.
I just like creating my own world. I mean, I literally think about it as going back and playing with like toys as a kid, except now I get to create my own worlds from scratch.
Okay, I'm gonna step in here and point something out. That's a really good philosophy that you have there.
It's not philosophy; it's just what I do.
Yeah,
I don't know if it's a philosophy per se.
However,
However,
if somebody hires you and you've got to make a deadline, that's a pretty damn good motivation. Yeah. If you want to keep doing art and making money at it, you have to make deadlines. When I did it full time, I sometimes put in 8 hours a day. I sometimes put in 16 hours a day, depending on what my deadlines called for. I loved what I did, but there was also a responsibility to my client, which was DC or Marvel.
Yeah.
So the motivation was I wanted to please my employer, and I wanted to get my work out there. It was a double thing for me. I needed to put a roof over my head and food on the table. I needed to meet my deadlines, but there was this motivation of doing something I also loved. So which was stronger, the motivation to do something I loved or the motivation to make money? And
they could have been equal. I mean, they could have been.
It was equal at the time. It isn't now. Yeah.
It changed with
that
time,
time,
right?
Yeah, it changed with time. But at that point, I had young children. I mean, my husband was out of a job, and I got into the comics industry because I loved doing the artwork, but I also needed to make the money.
Yeah,
I needed to make the deadlines.
Right.
And making the deadlines gives you a good reputation. So
yes.
It's
especially nowadays.
Especially nowadays. One thing I touched on with Rob, we were talking before the show, is that aspiring artists a lot of times want to at least, if some of them want to just do their own work and that's it. Some want just to step their toe into the pool of Marvel and DC, even for a short time. And what we were discussing was, if your motivation, and this is for those listening, if your motivation is to work for one of the big two, or even Image or IDW, and some of the smaller independents, maybe Silverline one day, the most important thing is make sure you meet the deadline and please the editor. We were talking about it's very important to do your best work, but you have to make peace with the fact that for practical reasons, not every page is going to be your A+ work. You may have a page that's a B, you may have a page that's B-. You may even have a C page or two in there, but as long as you have enough A or A+ pages, and if you're lucky enough to do the cover, a lot of times when you're first breaking in, they don't let you do the cover. If you're lucky enough to get to do the cover, make sure the cover's A+, and make sure that more of the pages are A than aren't. You're good, but you just can't let that perfectionism blow the deadline, because then you'll be, blacklisted and you won't get any more work. Especially
you can't let the perfect be the enemy of good enough.
Right. And I've told this story before, but when I was working at DC, I had a penciler and we were way behind schedule. And I called him up and I said, I need pages because it's going to be up to me now to catch us up. And he goes,
right.
Not today. I'm just not feeling the art. I'm like,
well,
you're going to feel my foot up your ass pretty soon. Is what you're gonna do.
Well, that's the practical approach. And again, if it was, were you with DC or Marvel at the time?
I was with DC, and it was going to be up to me to catch up the deadline because he was so behind.
Yeah, if you're at that level, feeling it is not part of the deal. You have to just do it, and every page is not going to be your best work. That's just part of life, you know. And so accepting that is important. So to those who are aspiring, that's very important. The other thing is, you know, Aaron's just described a work schedule that's pretty intense. 7 to 3 or 4 in the morning. That's a long day, even though, you know, it's not technically day. But that's a long stretch. You have to be willing, if you're going to commit yourself to art, even commercial art, that it's going to be one of the dominant forces in your life. Speaking from experience, I think all of us have, you know, had relationships suffer because of art demands. We've had our personal lives encroached upon because of art demands. We've had side jobs complicated because of art demands. It is something that is just part of being an artist.
I'm so happy to not be an artist.
The writer speaks. Speaking of the writer, talk to us, Rory. Being sort of new to the industry, although an experienced person in life and in other things, and certainly writing. But when you dedicate yourself to creative writing, do you have a disciplinary regimen? Do you have a set time during the day, morning, night? And again, we're going to get your take on whether you do it for fan recognition, for peer recognition, or simply pay, or some combination of those three elements.
I write, I create, and I've just recently changed the idea of creating to reforming. I'm just taking existing ideas and pulling them in different directions. I'm not making anything new, so I have to work with the existing world. I do it because, firstly, I enjoy it because I get just the biggest thrill out of it. When I can make myself laugh reading my own stuff, like, oh man, I still got it.
Yeah.
Or if I even better, if I can make somebody else laugh. I mean, if I can make Scott laugh, that's easy because him and I are like the same mind.
Right.
But if I can hand somebody that I wrote and watch the smile creep onto their face, I'm like, all right, that's a good one.
That works.
That falls
under
peer recognition, right?
Peer recognition.
That falls a little bit under that. Also falls into. I notice you haven't mentioned pay necessarily. Now, is that because you haven't yet been paid for any creative work, or does that interest you down the road, or is that not a big element of why you do it?
It's not a big element. Don't get me wrong. I'd love to sell 1 million copies of Steam Patriots.
Sure. Oh yeah.
And Scott and I, from the very beginning, we said, you know, money's not like the absolute. I mean, we would love to be able to be creative full time.
Sure.
I mean, that would be amazing. Yeah, we'd love to pull a Hemingway and just go drink and write somewhere on a beach and in the woods.
Sure.
And so that was we had to agree on that at first. We were stoked when the first Kickstarter for Steam Patriots and Divinity, like what the money we got from that funded the second copy.
Oh yeah. Yes.
So like we're in the black, and that's amazing because we were in the red for about 10, 11 years. I mean, the amount of money you put out and how many publishers and artists we went through, and it was just astounding.
Oh yeah, I've already pre-spent my next Kickstarter for my pencilers. I got to make it back, or I'm in the red.
And it's been a wild ride watching the process unfold and learning as we go. And having you guys around us is super helpful because you guys are veterans of the industry, so you can explain these words we don't know. I didn't know what the lettering and inking was. That's you're literally lettering and inking. Okay.
Lettering and inking, right. So, do you write for yourself when you're motivating yourself to write? You sit down and you go, "Man, I can't wait to do this." Writing for yourself first, for the audience, a combination. How does that work?
A combination depends on the story.
Okay.
So I write best in the early evening, but I'll come up with an idea in the morning and I'll knock it around in my head all day. And I'll pick one of my this time last year it was 15 different stories I was working on. Now it's down to 13 because Steam Patriots 1 is published and 2 is done with the artist.
Mm-hmm.
So I have 13 stories I'm pulling from, and I will pick one, and I'll go through the plot in my head, what's happened, what needs to happen, and I can just throw it to the back of my mind for the whole day. And when I'm done with school, because I go to school full time, and I have time to sit down in the early evening, I can bring it to the forefront of my mind and just let it keep rolling out.
Excellent.
So it depends on the story, because certain stories I'm writing for myself, certain stories I'm writing like with Scott, Steam Pages, because we both enjoy doing that. And we have more fun making it together, because we could just, we sit there and we're like 3 hours of just making each other laugh, and then an hour of actual work. But because we've delved into it so much in those 3 hours, that 1 hour of work, it just lays itself out.
So you got a kind of a Lennon-McCartney thing going, huh?
Yeah.
That's excellent. That's excellent. Well, it's definitely evident in the material. That issue 1, we're like, come on, let's go issue 2. Come on.
Right.
Come on.
Yeah. I mean, that's a good self-motivating thing too. Like, 1 is done and it worked and people liked it. And now having a couple cons under the belt, like with you in Memphis and then up in PA, that people like selling our book. Scott is way better at approaching strangers than I am. He can go sell anything. I can sell anything, but I prefer it not to be a cold sale. Like, hey, you come over to my table, because I feel like that's awkward. But giving people the idea for like Steam Patriots, like, oh, it's the American Revolution, but it's steampunk. You're gonna fall into like 2 camps. It's gonna be like, don't care, or never thought about that one before. And then they think about it for a few seconds, and you see a smile pop on their face because it clicks. They're like, oh, that would work. Okay.
Well, you did. Was that your first con? The con we did together in Memphis? Was that like the first con you'd ever done, or
that was the first con behind the booth? Yeah.
You did it. You did a fine job there. You fell right into it.
I was just taking your lead. I was just literally parroting whatever you said.
Well, wow. Well,
hi, my name's Dean Zachary.
That's not always safe.
Yeah, I'll sign that. Yeah.
But seriously, you did good. Just keep that positive attitude.
Just
not
be
everyone's
yourself.
going to buy the stuff.
Just be yourself. Just be
motivating
yourself.
People to buy the material is sometimes about allowing them the freedom to just browse. And that's one thing I try to do at a con is I don't do the salesmanship stuff. I just go, hey, thanks for coming to the table. Here's what it is. Feel free to browse around.
That's exactly what I do too.
I
go through. It says I'm going to go through my spiel, and I go through it. This is this. This is this. There's a that.
Yeah.
All right. Feel free to browse.
Yeah. Got any questions? Let me know.
Yeah.
And then if I'm running a sale, if it's the 3rd day of the con or the 2nd day or the last day of the con or whatever, I'll say, look, this is 50% off or 20% off or what have you, and that helps sometimes. But
it's good working with Scott, like up in PA, because he's like a carnival barker.
He'll
go 50-yard radius and like send people to the table, and then once they're there, I can start talking to them and explain things. And
right, Roland will literally just reach out like a carnival barker. Hey, can I tell you my comic? Hey, can I tell you my comic story? Hey, you over there, 25 feet away. Come here. No, you, the other one in the X-Men shirt. Come here. I'm like, wow, okay, man, go for it. And I just sit and watch him. And that can work too. It's whatever's comfortable, for the individual. But all right, so how many hours do you spend writing?
It varies. It can be some days it doesn't come to my head. If I can get one idea out a day on paper that I can expound on later, that's a win.
Okay.
Or if I can get like a one-liner or one scene in my head, because I will do 90% of the work putting it together in my head, playing it out like a movie with all the blocking of where people are. So I'm also, everything's like a frame. So, and I was doing that before, like even putting things into comic, cells.
And don't you wish you could just like, okay, we're gonna put this in here.
Right. Yep. Exactly. So 90%
how long
of the
does
work's
that
done.
take, Rory? How long does that take? Like 3 hours? You saying 3 hours, 2 hours?
Sometimes.
4?
Usually, if I get going, it's no less than 45 minutes, and I'll probably peak out after about 3 or 4 hours.
Okay.
That's the longest I'll go without. I can feel when my brain's starting to get fatigued, and I was like, I can't put much more into it, because I'll write it all out, and then I'll have to go back and like edit it. Just fix all the mistakes and all the grammar and all that stuff, clean it up, and put everything in the same tense, put everything people where they should be. But then editing, like, how is this going to flow with the part of the story I've already done and what's coming? So I'm looking in 3 directions at once, trying to get this coherent story. I mean, I guess that's what the editor does, but I like doing it in one go. I don't like doing rough drafts of paper for college either. Just one and done. That's all you get out of me.
Wow.
What about your template? Because templates are important at your stage in this business. What do you use? What are you using? Software. I mean, what application? What do you write in? Is it Word? Is it just
So I will. If I'm on the run, I'll use my iPhone with the notes thing or the Bear app.
Okay.
Oh,
and I'll have a different note or different whatever for each story, so I can bebop around and drop things in. And then I like writing it on paper if my brain is moving slow, but I know I'm going to have to translate it. It's just more romantic that way, I think. But it's going to have to get on the computer at some point, and I can write more faster, on the laptop. Yeah.
More, yeah,
more.
Yeah, exactly. Well, there are templates for comic book scripts out there. I have several of them.
That sounds more cooler.
You can find them online. If you want me to send you one or link to one,
great.
I can do stuff like that. I've got an X-Men script from way back that just breaks it down. I don't know whether you've seen any of this. Well, does Scott use a format?
I'm not sure. When we write, I know he for a while there, I don't know if he still does, he used the snowflake method, how things branch out. Yeah. And I do something similar that if I have a story in mind, like my jungle adventure story, I know all the high points, all the major scenes that have to happen. Now I'm just working on the in-betweens. How do I make them connect? How am I moving people in the story? What physical location is there? So it's like just mind mapping it. Okay.
Well, there is a set format. Like I said, you can find it online. They usually have Word format, documents. And it's not 100% necessary, but it's just a good habit to get into breaking it down. Page 1, panel 1. And then the indentions and so on, and how it's broken out, just for clarity, if nothing else.
Yeah,
and it also
be quicker too. Really.
Yeah, and it gives you a good set of timing, because you realize, okay, if I'm doing a standard 22 to 25 page script, and I'm already on page 16, I better wrap up and get to my cliffhanger for this.
That's good. Yeah.
So that helps. It helps break it down. Let's move on to our paragon of pencils, Rob Davis. Rob, talk to us a little bit about work habits. What's your motivation? Who are you working for? Your peers, your fans, and money? And what percentage of each of those 3 components goes into motivating you to get up every day and get on that drawing table?
The biggest motivator for this old retired guy is I have to create. I know a writer writes because he has to write. An artist draws or paints or does whatever because he has to. There's this deep need to create something, and that's my biggest motivator now. Now, at one point it was money. It's very similar to what Barb was saying. I had all my life as a young kid, about age 8. I picked up a comic book, and it was a Jack Kirby comic book, and I said, "Man, I got to figure out how to do this." This is great. Figuring and then learning who did what in comic books and all that. And I went to college, and I lived in Missouri. Now, this is before FedEx, UPS, and all that, before fax machines, before any of that. So I went to college, and soon discovered that the only way that I could really get into the industry, I would have to move to New York or near New York. Yeah. And this little town guy from the middle of Missouri, a little tiny town in Missouri, that was going to eat me alive, and I knew it. So I wandered off that path and didn't create for a while, and dropped out of college and just fell down a deep hole. And eventually got so far down to the bottom of the hole, I finally said, okay, this is either I'm gonna either leave this world, or I'm gonna figure out what is it I have to do in this world to not go crazy and not kill myself. And I figured I've got to figure out how to break into the comic book industry. And that's when FedEx came along, UPS came along, fax machines came along, and I started going to conventions. I set a schedule for myself every day. I worked a regular 9 to 5 job. I'd come home, have dinner, and then I would go. I had a room set aside where my wife, in that apartment where my wife and I lived, and that was my studio. And I would go in there at 9 or 10 o'clock at night, and I'd work until 1 a.m. on just learning the craft, teaching myself the craft, either studying books or looking at comic books or such. And I put together a portfolio. I'd go to a convention, get feedback, and I was driven. And to me, that's what it takes. That's what it's going to take for you to get into the industry, is to be completely driven that this is the thing you want to do so bad nothing can get in your way. That's what motivation is. And so I actually did do some studying of motivational tapes and that sort of thing to kind of put my mind into this. I've got to do it. I've got to do it. I've got to do it. And surprisingly, within about a year and a half, I got work in the industry. Now I wasn't as good as I am now, and I kept getting better as time went along. But because I concentrated on it, Siri's talking to me.
Siri's talking back to you.
Yeah, I worked really hard at it, and I made it. But it was a little easier then, as you and I were talking beforehand. I happened to hit it at just the right time, right when the black and white comic book boom happened. It was, within a year after Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles had hit and became a big seller in comic book shops, and black and white comic books were taking off. And so I kind of got in on that boom, and then I kind of parlayed that into more and more work in the industry, and eventually working on the Star Trek books first at DC, then at Malibu, and I kind of bounced around between the two of them for a little while. And then the implosion came, and all my contacts left the industry, and I got left high and dry. But for a number of years there, that drive got me there. But ever since then, I haven't stopped drawing. As I tell people, the daytime job paid the bills, fed me, fed my family, but the stuff I would do at night at the drawing board, that fed my soul. So I had to feed my soul, because the years I didn't feed my soul, it turned into a black dark hole.
It's strange.
It was a nasty time in my life.
I was opposite. I never wanted to work for Marvel DC. I don't remember having the motivation. Always wanted to do my own things. I was always making my own comics. That's how I taught myself storytelling, is making my own ideas and stuff. It's funny because and when I was young, most of my friends who drew comics with me all wanted to do their own stuff. Now, this could have been the Image thing at the time, everyone doing their own comics.
That's the time you came along. That was after all that.
And so I got into comics in the mid '80s, but when Image came out, and the idea of doing your own comic and but I started making my own comics in 6th grade, and I always wanted to make my own stuff. I never drew Spider-Man or Batman. I just never cared drawing other people's stuff.
I thought I would get into comic. I thought I'd get into superhero stuff, but I found that I could do likenesses really well, and that's why I tried to grab it. And I loved Star Trek anyway.
You loved
so I kind of gravitated. I gravitated to that. Now, I'd never been much of a writer myself. I mean, I can write, but it's not the level that it really needs to be professionally. And I've heard this story from writers who go, I wanted to be an artist in comics, but I could never get that down. Well, I got just the opposite. I would like to have done both, or write comics, but I don't really. I probably could have the skills if I dedicated myself like I did to the art, where I would sit down and learn, the basics and the all the little storytelling things that go on. But I devoted it to drawing and telling a story visually. So if somebody comes to me with, and that's what happened, is somebody came to me with a story that was they needed told, and they handed it to me. That's an interesting story. I'll tell that for you. That's what happened with Scimitar, which is the thing that got me some notice in the industry. It wasn't superheroes, but it was in a way. So it was kind of quasi this, and it was very sexy. We actually had some X-rated issues of it, so it generated some controversy, which is when you're trying to sell something,
free publicity.
Even bad publicity is good publicity. So I've always, and that's why when we have these talks, what is it the thing that I emphasize the most? It's the story. It's the story. It's the story.
Yeah.
Sure.
You got to tell the story, and that's where I come
that's
from.
The most important
that's
thing.
my thing.
I want to ask you something, Rob, about in the days when you were working full time, whether it was for DC or whoever. What was your daily work schedule like? How many hours a day did you put to get a page done? Because I get that question. I know people who watch this who are aspiring pencilers are going to want to know, like, how fast do I need to be?
Well, I got to where I could do a page a day, and it took 10 to 12 hours. Okay. Now, some of that was not all of that was at the drawing board, but it was always in here. I was always, I would sometimes I'd have to get up and walk around, but I was always thinking about what I needed to do next. So, so it was about a 10 to 12 hour.
It's about
day.
a 10 to 12 hour day.
Okay. Starting sometimes at 10 or 11 o'clock in the morning and working till 12 or 1. With breaks splashed in there.
I've got it down to do 2 days to do a page. I could do a page in 1 day if I wanted to. The Cintiq speeds me up.
That's just penciling. Yeah. That's just penciling. That's not.
That was just penciling too, because I would do the rough the first day, and then I would do the final pencils. I go over it twice. The second day.
I did get to where I could do when I did Daughter of Dracula for Ron Portier. That was the first step back into the industry, was doing that with Ron Portier. It's a graphic novel. I still have it available at my table at shows, but that I got tricked into doing it because Ron had this script for Daughter of Dracula, and he had tried to sell it as a screenplay, and he rewrote it as a graphic novel, and he couldn't interest anybody in doing it, and so he pitched it at me, and I really liked it. I thought it was a great story, but I didn't really think it was going to take a lot of work to get it done. So in order to put him off without being, too mean about it, I said, well, I'd like to do this, but I could probably only give you a page a week. Mm-hmm. And to my surprise, he says, okay.
Yeah. Wow. Something's better than nothing, I think that's what it comes to.
I every Sunday, or every Saturday or Sunday for 2 years, I penciled, lettered, inked, and put gray tones on 1 page a week for 2 years, and put that and that book came out, and
that's dedication.
And Ron kept saying, well, and every week the new pages would come in, and there was no lowering of the level of work that you were doing on it either. And I'm going, well, I committed to do a page a week, and I was going to give you a good page each and every week. And that was working full time as a bus driver at the same time. So, throughout the week. So, but that was how I got back into it. And I've done something on the side ever since. And now that I'm retired, this is what I do regularly every day. And I run about this. I run about 8 to 10 hours a day. Doing it. Yeah.
And take weekends?
No, I work weekends too, but that's also including that's design work that I do for Airship 27. Okay. It's it's some of that stuff. It's bookkeeping that I do for that. I'm the chief cook and bottle washer for Airship 27, so I take care of all that. And Ron does most of the editing and getting the stories in and getting artists lined up. and I'm the one that makes it all work. So that's what I do.
I hear you
that's
there.
interspersed with everything else. Yeah, I call it chief cook and bottle washer. So you're doing everything except those. And that's the thing. That's why our partnership works. He's got that part that and that clicks in with what I do, and I fill in the blanks. And between the two of us, we've got a pretty good deal going on. So
now let me get to the root of it here. What gratifies you the most? Fan reaction or peer reaction, or
peer
combination?
Peer reaction.
Okay.
Peer reaction. And fortunately, a lot of those peers are also the people who read and buy the things that I create. Now, I've won a few awards, the Pulp Factory Awards. I've won a couple of those. I won a Pulp Arc Award. Then these are all for illustration work. But the biggest pleasure I get from it is when that book, it's just like that first comic book you get. The first you can, and if I'm lying, shoot me here, Dean, but I'll bet that first comic book that came in a box from the company, you opened it up and you saw your work published.
There's nothing like that.
There's no other high like it.
No,
there's nothing like it. And I still get that every time a box of books comes to the house and I open it up and I turn and there's my work printed, even though I'm the one who printed it. But it's still physically that I know that's going to go out and people are going to see it and they're going to buy it and they're going to like it. So, but the biggest, what I look for the most is from my peers and from myself is how self-satisfied I am with it. But it's satisfying that the fact that there are people out there that are buying it and enjoying it. So
but no matter how many times I tell Rob just to give it up, he just does.
He just keeps going.
Jesus, Rob,
and I'm not doing it. And I'm not doing it to get rich, and realizing that I was never going to get rich, but I was definitely going to be able to feed my soul. That's what drives me. I have to draw. And it's nice that I can draw something that other people like.
Yeah,
the peers and the people and the customers.
Peers and the fans. I would agree with that. That's the gratification I receive.
That's the biggest satisfaction I get. Yeah,
is a combination of those. I love. I'll give you an example. When I'm at a convention, it doesn't matter whether it's San Diego or a small town. Doesn't matter. But if I'm away from the table when the person who commissioned the piece comes to get the work, I'm always disappointed. I want to be there because I want to see the reaction.
See the reaction,
right? And I'll tell you, that's what got me going the most. I'm like, seeing that person's grin when they see what they described to me, and then I've brought it to life. We've done
magic for them. We've done magic for them.
Yeah. And when a comic book that I've worked on and put a lot of myself into comes out and somebody grabs it and whatever reaction it is, but especially if it's a positive reaction, they get it and you're sharing your own view of the world with them. And that's where the gratification comes from.
There's no bigger high than that and getting that book and opening it up. And
people say, but you still want to get paid. Yeah, but I've got a day job, and I do want to get paid, but I've got a day job. So that's why I'm not doing, logos for people and design work for people. Because I've already got a day job, right? So I want to see what they respond to that's personal from me, from what I create. That's precisely why I'm such a stickler for this no calculation thing, because I'll catch myself calculating and I have to turn that editor off, turn that editorial voice completely off and go, don't edit this. Don't worry about who's going to like it or who's not going to like it. If there's 150 people in Croatia who love what you did, it doesn't matter. That's great. Yeah. That's it. That's who your audience is.
I thought your entire motivation was to please me, which you've been failing at Miserably.
No, my motivation is to annoy you.
Annoy me. Well, you succeeded in spades.
Yes, I'm a success. I knew it. But you
know, the person you need to please is you.
Yes.
Because I don't know about you, Dean, but I am the harshest critic of my own work that's out there. You know, I am harder on my own work than anybody else's, except maybe Aaron.
Yeah. Well, it goes without saying. We gotta.
I mean, you asked me to define what you do as drawing. I mean, I kind of quasi definition. I mean, maybe.
I don't know.
There's a flag flying.
But yeah, you've got to accept something that I used to joke around with buddies of mine who's, he got paid this much for this, he got paid this much for that. I'm like, that's awesome, guys. But if you really just want to make money and that's all you want to do, why are you doing this?
Yeah.
There's so much other things you can do if you just. So obviously, you know, I would call them out on this posturing that, you know, this guy made this and this guy. That's great for them. That's awesome, dude. You know, like he made this much money on this comic. So and so made this. That's awesome.
Okay,
but
hey, go for it.
That's
Good
great
for you.
But if it happens for you, great. But here's the key: if it doesn't happen for you, it doesn't mean that you failed. It means your audience is different from that dude. It may be 20% of that dude's. It may be 50% of that dude. But if you've got an audience, that's what's important. It doesn't have to be millions of people, right?
It doesn't.
Especially now that we have the internet distribution system, right?
Yeah.
And I mean,
it's very hard to get millions of people because it's just people. There's so much stimulus coming at people. So many things.
There's so much stuff out there.
It's hard to get them to focus. I mean, even getting people to read my comic online is pulling. Getting people to read your comic in period. Is very hard. Which is kind of demoralizing when they buy it and don't read it. I'm like, that's like buying a movie and not watching it.
Which I've seen people
but they do it all the time.
I've seen people do that as well. You know.
We should go back to the 1600s and just find wealthy benefactors that like what we do.
Yeah. Yes. The Medici
How hard is
family. Where are they? Come on.
Well, they have that. It's called Patreon.
Yes, they do have Patreon.
I'm still on the lookout for an old rich widow with a bad cough.
Yeah. There you go. Whoa, but seriously. So, Barb, tell us about after, you know, the tough years, the 90s, where you're doing the 16-hour day sometimes, and then as you get to that point where it doesn't matter, the industry changes, everything goes away. So now we're talking about more mature creators, but they still have bills to pay, and they still have families, and they still have to make money, but they still love doing the art.
Right.
So you're facing this issue that we've all faced, those of us who've been in the industry for a while. Yeah. How did you address that, and how did you not lose your enthusiasm for what you loved, even though you had to make compromises? How did you balance it?
For me, when things kind of fell apart and I had to go back to the Muggle world and make money, my husband kind of said to me, he says, okay, now if you're going to do this, you can't just put 6 months in and quit and go back to comics because it's so dicey right now. You've got to commit to doing this job.
Sure.
Yeah.
And I knew that the only way I was going to do that was to not do comics at all for a while and to get completely into this. So I went back to accounting, and I was a corporate accountant, and I turned my back on comics for a while and says, okay, I'm done with that. You know, I did it. I did it for 12 years. I did it for, 12 to 16 hours a day, 7 days a week for 10 to 12 years. Because it was just that I just got that much work. And then all of a sudden, all of my editors got fired and nobody hired me again. And the industry fell apart and nobody was hiring. And I was disgusted. And I'm going, you know what? I've been doing this for 12 years. I'm not ready to go pimp myself out again. You know, have to make the rounds. Hi, my name's Barb Kilber. Stuff like that. So I was really frustrated and angry. So I turned my back on it for a while. And I realized.
I feel your pain.
I realized, after about 5 years, I couldn't stand it anymore.
Yeah.
It's like an itch. It's like an itch underneath your skin. and it gets worse and worse as time goes by. And finally I'm like, oh, I got to do something. I got to do some comics. This is driving me crazy. Like I'm not cut out to be just an accountant for the rest of my life. So I started picking up little odds and ends, and it was just enough to keep me happy because I was working 12-hour days in accounting. So it was just enough.
A lot of numbers.
Yeah. It was just enough to keep my little toe in and keep me happy and creative. And we paid the house off, I don't know, about 7 or 8 years ago. And I says, okay, I'm going to part-time because I got to get back into it.
Awesome.
I can't stand this anymore. And so I went down to part-time at work, and I really started to dig in again. And that's around the time, it was about a year after I'd done that when you and Roland came to me and we started doing Cat and Mouse. And I started doing other things. I was working with Paul Kupperberg at Charlton Neo. And then shortly before the pandemic hit, I completely retired. And that was the best thing I've ever done.
Yeah. Isn't it though?
Make no mistake. I still keep plenty busy outside of comics, but I try to schedule my days now. In the mornings, I will do things that my mom's in a care home. I will do stuff with her. I will run the errands, get my gardening done, get the housework done, stuff like that. And then from noon to 6, I will do comics.
Awesome.
And then depending on the evenings, I will also work on it in front of the TV. But Saturday mornings are Silverline accounting days because I'm also happen to be the CFO for Silverline. So I have to keep all that in mind. And usually Saturdays, I'm pestering Roland and DJ for invoices or why did you do this? What's this for?
What's this for?
Yeah.
This map.
What exactly does this do for us? Yeah. So I have to schedule accounting time for Silverline as well.
Well, what about
part of the industry?
The ratio of peer approval, fan approval, and compensation? Like, give us an idea of each of those components. How important are they on your priority list?
Peer approval, I think, is top. Fan approval is second. And because, like I said, I'm retired, I have a nice retirement package. I don't need to do this for the money. I do this because I love it. And usually most of the profits I make off my books, I end up splitting most of it up and giving it out to my creators on Divinity to keep them motivated to keep going. And I'm in one of those very, very rare and lucky positions where I don't need to do this for a living. I do it because I want to be doing it. And I have a genuine love of it. And I have to be doing it. So it's not for the money and it's not for the recognition, although Divinity's doing well.
That's nice. It's a nice sideline.
Yes.
Yeah, it really is.
I do really appreciate peer appreciation, recognition. And I had something happen to me 2 weeks ago that has never happened to me before. I was at a show in the Wisconsin Dells, and I've given hundreds, maybe thousands of photographs out over the years where I'll take photographs with fans. They want, oh, can I take a photo with you? Yeah. And we'll take a selfie or something. A fan was walking by my booth a couple of weeks ago, and she stopped and she looked up and she goes, oh, and she's just overcome. She starts to shake and tears come into her eyes.
Wow.
Goes, I am such a huge fan of yours. I've always wanted to meet you. Can I take a picture with you? And I said, sure. No. Yeah. And I came around the table and I gave her this big hug, and she's just literally shaking with tears in her eyes. Hi, Ryan. And she says, I'm one of your biggest fans. And that is a first for me, where somebody was just so overwhelmed to meet me in 30 plus years. That's the first time something like that has happened to me. And that was pretty damn special.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's an awesome story. Ryan also says motivation is to tell a great story and have fun creating it. So that's true. That's true, Ryan. And our boy Tommy, howdy do, my peeps. Howdy do, Tommy. Tommy is another motivated person. We joke that he's the inker who never sleeps, and
really.
he's always working on something because Roland's always giving him stuff to work on, and I'm always throwing stuff at him too. I'm doing another cover. Can you ink it? That kind of stuff.
Yeah. I never
by
really
the way,
worried about. I'm trying to think peer, but I just always wanted to see my thing put together and on the shelf. That was my biggest motivation.
Yeah. So seeing it,
I never cared about what my peers thought or if fans, if somebody wanted to read my story and talk about it because there are philosophical ideas, especially in my Godling story, that'd be great. But I just never. The reason I never. I guess sometimes I never cared what my peers are doing is a lot of some of the peers and stuff were doing stuff that just that wasn't my cup of tea. I always felt, and I felt this way a long time, like a lot of people in comics I feel don't take advantage that you could do anything in this medium, and that is a personal frustration for me sometimes when I see people continuously rehash the same ideas over and over again, and I'm not technically always really sure why that is, but when somebody finally pushes themselves to do things that I've never seen before, Bill Sienkiewicz is one that he does. I mean, things that you've never seen, and because I'm just like, out of all the entertainment mediums, you could do anything you want and get away with it. It's comics, the visual and writing. I mean, you can do. And so when I see somebody's like, I have another Batman type story, I'm like, yeah. So I'm always kind of amazed, and so I never really. There's certain peers and stuff or friends of mine that I'd like to get their opinion ideas on, but I always felt like I was over here doing these weird, crazy things, and everyone was kind of doing a lot of other people doing safe mainstream sort of things. So I've never felt like they merged. Like I just always assumed they wouldn't get what I'm doing because that's not what their mindset is. Not what they're doing is bad. It's just
you might be surprised.
Maybe, because it never seemed to kind of cross the bridge. I mean, I find it weird that even people look at my main character, Boomer. He's like a blue lightning bolt. They can't figure that out. Well, what's this blue guy? They don't. And I always find that weird when I see so many comics use so many other strange creatures, but they look at mine and like, we don't get it. I'm like, all right.
That's
okay.
That's whatever works.
Obviously,
whatever doesn't work for you, guys,
are getting it. I mean, we're getting it.
I also felt that Trumps and Steam Patriots are something I haven't seen before. Very unique ideas.
Very unique idea. Yeah, absolutely right. And another thing, Aaron, you bring something up about doing something new, doing something novel. I also file that in the category of approach. Because it's very hard to make the argument that someone is doing something completely unique, because almost everything is a reassembly of things that we've always seen and experienced.
I don't think I do that unique of stuff. So,
but that being said, it's the execution and the style being so unique to the creator that gets my attention, right? Because, I'll take Todd McFarlane as an easy target, right? Yeah. You look at him and you go, well, when he was doing work for Marvel, and you go, okay, he's doing a unique take on Spider-Man. But then when he did Spawn, and you're saying, wow, it's not that he's the best artist. It's that you're seeing Todd's mind. You're in his mind, and you're experiencing. I mean, we've seen similar stories before, so that's not the novelty. The novelty is how he's sharing that world with us. The style is outstanding. And that's what, I don't know about you other guys, but that's what grabs my attention. If somebody's style is so unique in art world, in writing, same thing. But if their style is so uniquely theirs and powerful and compelling that it stands out, I'll sit there and stare at it.
That's a lot of times what I do with a lot of the European comics. Rarely, as a lot of them, I don't quite completely understand. They do that. The European storytelling is very. things out of left field. I remember one character in a story died and like fell apart into a bunch of ferrets that ran off into the forest. They never explained why
that
she
kind of
fell
thing. Yeah,
into the ferrets.
yeah.
They just never. They just said, "Well, that's what she does," and I'm like, "Okay, I guess I'll take that as it is." It's just a sensibility and storytelling. They've always, but the artwork and the imagination in a lot of those books is just off the chart. And that's what always motivates me. I mean, I think looking back, I grew up I think I was more influenced by underground comics, but like, the heavy metal movie, even 80s toys. If you look at 80s toys, they're very, Conan, you had like Masters of the Universe, with like all these, robots or whatever. And there was about this idea and I think just everyone was creating in a void. They were just creating whatever looked cool, put it out there and hope for the best. But I think now so many people influenced by so many other things that it's really hard. But it is one thing that it's not even a motivation for me. When people like, well, I would never do this. I remember one guy, and just a story, he did this Aztec comic, and I remember it did a flip book, and it was like this Aztec warrior, and like almost kind of like that one movie Mel Gibson did. I can't remember the one with
the one with the Aztec Apocalypto.
Oh, yeah. It was kind of like this Aztec warrior running around. He's fighting like a jaguar god, which I've got. And I was like, this is really, really cool. And he's like, and I was like, oh, I really enjoyed this. I bought his book and liked it. And then he's like, well, no, that's not selling. Superheroes are selling. So he goes off and does his complete superhero book and puts himself out of business like that. And I'm like,
interesting.
Why didn't you just stay with what you had?
Stay with what you had, yeah.
But he's like, well, no, I smell money over here, so I'm going to go do this because this sells. And then he fails. And I'm just like, I see this a lot.
It's an interesting story, and it brings up a question for you. I want you to comment on this. Yeah. I use pop music as a metaphor, specifically the band Genesis. When Peter Gabriel left and Phil Collins took over, Phil Collins became known as the hit machine, right? He would write commercial stuff, and Peter was the more conceptual, fine art,
especially for his videos and stuff.
Right. Rock, so progressive rock,
more progressive, exactly. So, but here's the thing that Phil knew, I think, intrinsically, not one's better, one's not better. I'm not talking about that. Just he knew something, and he said, okay, for every 10 songs on the album, right, you do a certain number for yourself, a certain number to pay for the album to be commercial. Yeah. So in essence, you do a half a dozen commercial songs, or maybe 7 commercial songs, and then 3 that are just out there, just experimental, total prog, total what you want to do. Oddly enough, sometimes the prog experiments end up being the ones that people respond to. Now, not always. Yeah. A lot of times they're just weird. But a lot of times they are. And what you're touching on is, I would have loved for that guy, you want to make money? Okay. Do a superhero book over here, and then do your own book again, right? Like, go back to your own thing, try it, see if you like it, then come back and do your own thing. We've got a latecomer here. Brent, welcome.
Yeah, that's usually what I say. I'm a huge Phil Collins fan. For some reason, I never really got into Genesis that much, and I like Peter Gabriel. And I don't know why Genesis. It was okay, but Phil Collins also did a lot of, like you said, a lot of music. Personal music, which I think is sort of a byproduct of a singer-writer combination. Yes. Somebody who writes their own music, I think, does it from a more personal place, which we actually don't have a lot of anymore nowadays, especially the sort of traditional singer-songwriter.
Billie Eilish.
Yeah, she's probably the closest we have as somebody who does it. And so I think
Adele.
Yeah,
Adele. She's another one. Yeah.
And so it was, but it's in the same thing. I just usually feel like if you write from the heart, if you write a story that touches you, or whatever. I think one of the things that sometimes comics do, but comics is always it struggle with the identity of being a kid's medium. And I think sometimes when it tries to go deep or talk about deep introspective things or other types of stuff, they miss the mark. like when the Comics Code Authority came up, everything was boobs and gore, and it's like that's not really what makes, like, this is an adult comic that says boobs and gore, and I'm like, that's not really what makes an adult comic. It's usually talking about ideas that maybe kids don't necessarily get, like philosophical or abstract ideas. And I see some comics do that, but fewer than should be. And people argue sometimes like, well, comics are just supposed to be fun. Yeah, it's true. They are supposed to be fun, but like any medium, like music and movies, there are pieces of art that transcend that mean something personal, and that means something, like you're saying, something about the world, about yourself, about your life. And I think comics is afraid to do that. And there's very few stories I see hit that mark. And there's like, I think European comics are the closest I've gotten to like really personal stories that move. Because if you look at movies, there's lots of movies that tell very like dramas and very, but comics never did that. Books and movies know that, and they can do serious works and comical works and fun works, but comics are just obsessed. No, it has to be fun. Just fun, goofy superhero shenanigans.
There's always exceptions. Yeah. Sandman.
There are some out there. Yeah,
there are. And I'm not saying they're not, but it's weird to me that it's almost like people make comics are constantly trying to chase their childhood instead of using the medium that you can tell any story you want. The medium itself is just a vehicle to tell anything you want, but a lot of people won't tell it because it won't work in comics.
Yeah,
but I'm always like, why wouldn't it?
It would.
Yeah.
What you're talking about is the same things happening in pop music. Is that there's two levels. There's the push to make something popular, so it's a money machine, and then there's just people out there doing great work. I used to tell people, do you really think we were talking about guitar virtuosos one time, and we were talking about like Eric Clapton and Van Halen and people like that.
Yeah.
And I made the point to somebody. I said, "Do you really think Van Halen is the only person who can play that way?" I said, "Van Halen is unique and one of the greats. However, there's probably 99 other guitarists who are that good, but the timing and the connections weren't right for those guys." Yep. So what the point I'm making is, it's not just that they're not out there. You may not know about them. And there's also declarative. It's always touchy to make declaratives of what comics should or shouldn't be, just like what music should or shouldn't be. It's better to ask the question, what is it that you want to say and communicate? And we are in a better position now with technology to share that with a wider audience than ever before, because we're not just trying to get on the Billboard charts. We're not just trying to, meet the needs of one marketplace. We've got a worldwide marketplace. So you can literally do exactly what you want to do. Now, that being said, some people like me, for example, grew up on mainstream comics. I love them. That's what inspired me. But what I'm going to try to do with my work is use the things that inspired me to do comics and find a new way to share those visions, right? So the novelty will be how I share that. It may not be the concept. It may be the way I'm doing it, maybe the style.
Exactly, yeah. And and strangely enough, the one thing, I've even heard in comics, like I've heard, again, people have always said comics should be fun, I never hear writers say that about books. Books should be fun. I never hear movies say movies should be fun. I never hear people in the industry. It's almost like comics are still in that sort of apologetic mode of apologizing for what they are.
You think there's a stigma still, is what you're saying?
There's a stigma still. And
there is.
And it's almost like we still we know we're comics, and I sense a little bit of that almost in the Marvel movies. A little bit with the humor.
I do.
That's where my problem with them comes from. That's it. There's almost like this sort of humor or apologetic. Like, we know this is corny and stupid, so we're going to have a bunch of lighthearted humor. Right. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Because you can't take this seriously because comics are for kids. So, and it's almost like that stigma is followed into the movies, and I'm like, and it's almost perpetuating it. Like there's so many, and a lot of the
They're
people
making
watching
money
movies don't read the comics. Yeah, but a lot of the people in the movies don't read the comics because, again, well, comics are for kids. I don't read comics, but if they put it in the movies is an adult genre, so I can enjoy it in movies. It's I don't understand the train of thought that way, but it's really how people think.
I think eventually that will work itself out. It's probably going to take, unfortunately, it's probably going to take another generation for that to happen. I'll be gone by then.
Yeah, I know.
You might live long enough to see it.
No, somebody's going to whack Aaron before that.
Strange enough, with the stigma doesn't stick.
If I'm going, he's going.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. Strange enough, with the stigma doesn't stick as in manga. Even in American people who like manga, they never see it. It's never an apologetic medium. They just love it.
Yeah. Well,
and I still don't understand.
The Japanese their society is completely different from ours. Theirs is more group oriented, and America and many European countries are individually oriented. The person is more important than society as a whole.
Yeah,
and
that's a Western
that's
thing.
why. Yeah, that's why Japanese see it. They see that whole thing differently. Yeah,
they do, and it's very just like it's another medium. I mean, this is when I give people my comic and tell them about this philosophical ideas and talks about some stuff that I've dealt with in my life or whatever. They almost find it like, well, yeah, but it's a comic book. I'm actually having to almost battle that stigma a little bit myself.
Yes, that is their prejudice. That is not your problem. That is their.
It's not my problem, but it's kind of French when you give it to them and they're just like, "Well, like this is something I wrote seriously about my life and things I've gone through." I'm like, yeah, but it's a comic book. I mean, so it like takes my message and almost knocks it down.
And the answer to that is yes, you're right.
You're right. It is,
and it's an art form. It's an indigenous American art form. It's something we should be proud of. And before we get too close to the end, I want to give Brent a chance to talk a little bit about our subject today. Brent was, what's my motivation? Right. So, spoken like Grandpa Simpson asking for where's my medication. But
it smells like mustard.
So, what I want you to do, just for us, because we've all covered this tonight, a little bit about your work habits, being productive during the day, what time of day is more productive for you, how many hours do you put into your writing, and then as far as the motivation goes, talk a little bit about the components of peer recognition, fan recognition, or monetary compensation, and the level that each one of those elements brings motivation to you.
Okay.
So,
I'm going to try to go fast because you guys got the benefit of talking about it all. And
we've just hammered it in the ground.
Detail.
I will not be boring or anything.
We'll stop you if we've heard it before.
Yes, please. In fact, just stop me if you're bored, because I can also talk about some fun stuff about what you guys were just talking about. But
okay.
So, what's my motivation? My motivation was I decided I was a writer about maybe 20 years ago. And
damn right you are.
Yeah. And what's weird is I know it in my bones now.
Yes.
When I started figuring it out in my 30s, I actually tried to quit after a while. I was like,
the same thing.
Yeah.
I think my problem is I'm trying to find an identity for myself. Maybe it was a quarter life crisis and I was late. I don't know. But and I couldn't do it. I just couldn't quit writing.
Yeah.
I eventually found a way to make it actually happen in my day to day. And that's when I actually felt like I really started almost living in that way. I finally knew. I mean, people say your 20s are when you're trying to figure yourself out, and maybe in your 30s is when you get there. For me, it was the 40s. It was when I finally could say, I know what I want. What I want is to be a writer. And that has really been my only motivation, because I haven't gotten any monetary.
He's honest, people. He's honest.
It's the creative life that, unfortunately, in our present society,
we're worth more dead.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Oh, that should be a new comic.
Or we cut our ear off.
Worth more dead.
Yeah.
I'm trademarking that right now.
Yeah. And it has the thing is that's the, in its purest form, that is really my only motivation, because I get peer recognition, but I also am willing to hear my friends shred my work, and they do so.
Well, wow. Okay.
I actually submitted a film script to some friends, along with a few other scripts, and everyone else, they loved their scripts. Mine, they came at it with steak knives and everything.
I enjoyed that,
dude. And I'm like, okay, I want to say I deserved that because I took the risk. And that's the thing. I don't want anyone to blow sunshine up my ass.
That's exactly right.
Hear the truth so I can get better, or else I'm fooling myself. And I don't want to be on my deathbed and have everyone line up just to tell me, I actually thought you were a crappy writer. I just didn't want to tell you.
I tell people, if they can't take the heat, then get out of the kitchen.
Yeah.
And Scott does that to me all the time. Everything I give him, he just sets on fire before reading it.
Yeah. I mean, I have enough people telling me they like what I do enough so that I think, okay, maybe I should have been a plumber. So I'm beyond that. So that's good. But I mean, I'm still submitting short stories to places that I get rejected. I get rejected much, much more than I ever have gotten accepted. And that's not easy to deal with.
Right.
But in the end, I know this is what I want. And the cool thing about it is I almost appreciate the fact that it's hard. I've seen people who want big things, but even as they start talking about it, they don't know what they're talking about. They don't know how hard it's going to be, which means they probably don't want it very bad.
They're going to have to want it pretty bad.
You have to want it. And you know what's cool is it's cool to want things.
Yeah,
it is really cool. In your soul, no, I would do this for free.
And I am.
No, shoot, in some ways I'm paying for it. Yeah. But I would still do it because I just love it that much. Sometimes I feel like people should be envious of me because I know what I like doing. I have friends out there who still struggle to know what it is they're really all about, and what is it they enjoy, and how can that actually be life affirming. I've already settled that. I love that about it. So
that's good. Cool. So you like the struggle. That's good because being an artist, that's part of it. That comes with it. What do you spend a day writing? How many hours a day?
That's what I was going to say. I set a goal for myself of about 20 hours a week, which I almost accomplish exclusively early mornings. I get up about 5 a.m. most mornings and I do it. And the upshot of that is I'm exhausted most of the time. I don't like that. I wish I could do it at other times, but in terms of being able to avoid the just the interruption of life, my brain is spinning so fast at the end of the day. I don't know if I can actually settle down enough to do it then, and I've got a day job. So that's really how I make it work. But again,
success in any of the creative arts is going to take sacrifice, and most of what you're sacrificing is sleep.
Yeah.
Yes.
It occurred to me, if I got a part-time job that I worked 20 hours at, I'd probably be substantially richer than I am now. But that's okay because I could be doing a job that I don't like.
Well,
it depends. Doing it for free, and I do.
It's what is success?
Yeah.
What is success?
To you. Yeah, that's what's important.
If you're enjoying it and it's satisfying you, that's success to you, or it should be.
Yeah.
I mean that's success to me. If I'm happy with what I'm doing.
I was fortunate in that I could work from home when my kids were little. I mean, when I first started out, it wasn't that dire because my husband had a mid-level office job, and he was like, you can do your little hobby. And then all of a sudden his whole division got laid off. They just completely stopped the whole division, and he came home and was like, I don't have a job. And all of a sudden I'm like, oh, this is not such a hobby anymore, is it? And the pressure was all on me to take care of the family. But the thing, and I worked it around. I took the kids to school. I come home, you know, and I work, pick the kids up, take them to sports, come home, and then Dick would feed them at night and do their homework with them, and I would work until 2 a.m, and then I get up and do it all over again the next day, 7 days a week. I did it, you know, because that's one of the things is because I had to, but the other thing is because I was driven to do it.
Yeah.
And so I slept on probably 4 hours of sleep for 12 years.
Yeah. Yeah. So the moral of the story is, if you're going to get in this
don't
business,
be artistic, kids.
Yeah.
Go to medical
school. Actually,
go to medical school.
I think being a creative is like being gay. You either are or you're not.
Yeah.
It's not something you can choose to be. You are, and it's a matter of whether you learn learn how to deal with it.
How to deal with. Yes.
Some people put it off in the corner and it's just a hobby, but other people, it's more than a hobby.
To me, it's a calling.
Life.
I have to create every day, or I'll get cranky. It's just I've got to work on something creative.
Dean starts whining.
I get whiny. I start to sound like Aaron after a while.
I know.
Like, nobody wants to be around.
Talk about whiny. You know, yeah.
Right. Well, so last thing, Brent. Question to you: are the Marvel movies? Because I want to get one more fun question in before we close out tonight. And I can't wait to see Aaron's response to this one.
I'm curious because
I'm already laughing.
Are the Marvel movies getting too, shall we say, humor shielded because they don't want to do the hard work of making the content believable? Now, I know that's a loaded question with a lot of editorializing in it, and I did that intentionally. But go on, and what do you think? Or do you think, no, that's how Marvel Comics should be? I mean, that's fair, too, if you want to.
Well, no serious message is what they're saying.
Yeah. Here's my thought. Marvel, I love the Marvel movies. And it's not because I feel like I see what you're saying, Aaron, in that they bring in the humor almost as a way to deflect away from the fact that it is a comic book movie. But I will say this, Marvel, I mean, there's a reason why they are $1 billion industry. It's because they have found something that genuinely works. Mm-hmm. And I was going to say, Rob, I don't think you need to wait till, you're dead and buried to see the medium expand. I feel like we're there already. Like if there's someone who says, I like comic books, but I'm not really into the fun, bouncy stuff. I want the dark, grim stuff. I'd say The Boys. I don't love the show. But I will say,
not my cup of tea, but it's definitely
Stranger Things is probably in that same
okay.
I don't know live scene
a comic book movie, I mean, straight up, like Watchmen is. Yeah. I mean, the movie, but even the show. I mean, those guys are dealing with stuff that you're not going to get anywhere else, and the reason is because they're using a comic book medium.
Right.
The Marvel, I don't feel like they're trying to dumb it down. I feel like they've landed a formula that works. And frankly, I love it. Frankly, I watch the Marvel movies as a colonic to the rest of the crap I have to deal with every day. It's just, sometimes I need to laugh.
I will counter-argue that I think they do dumb it down, and I will show you a few. When I read George Perez's Avengers, Ultron in that comic killed an entire third world country. He slaughtered every single one of them just to get the Avengers' attention.
Right.
Would you ever see that in a Disney Marvel movie?
It's not like
you would never see that in a Disney Marvel movie.
No.
This is what I'm talking. In the comics, they didn't do the humor. The danger was real. They were real people. So that's what I'm saying.
They did.
Didn't you feel the danger was real?
There was humor, but not as much. I mean, like you felt like a danger. I mean, when I read a lot of the stuff, like I remember when they did the Thanos. I mean, the battle with Thanos in the comic was much more intense because he kept he could alter reality. So as they kept attacking him, he would like turn them into flowers or bees, and he would just alter reality. And I'm like, wow, this is intense. So I do think there is a dumbing down in the tone. They are not. I mean, well, Tony Stark's
It's a
doesn't deal
different
with
medium.
alcoholism.
It's
You know?
it's a different medium.
It's a different medium. But again, I think you take away, especially a lot of the characters, what makes those characters interesting for the sake of selling a joke.
I smell another podcast here.
Well,
you know, Tony Stark's struggle with alcoholism. Hank Pym's struggle with mental illness. These were unique ideas and interesting character traits. All of that's gone in the Marvel movies. They're just a carbon copy of every single character. They actually started out Thor as the actual Thor. Oh, well, he's too boring. We'll make him snarky. Everyone has the exact same humor as Tony Stark.
That's how they kept Chris Hemsworth doing Thor.
Right.
Well, okay.
You
touched on something there. There's a broad subject matter and then a more specific one. On the broad subject matter, I think there's a balance that was struck by Jon Favreau's Iron Man 1.
I think the first few Marvel movies I thought were good.
The director of Thor, and I cannot pronounce his name to save my life, he's the one that brought so much slapstick into it. And then I was
the one who brought the slapstick was Josh Whedon. That's
Whedon. I was getting to Whedon. Yeah. Whedon has
Whedon is the one, and they've stuck with him
ever. He's the snarky guy. Yeah, he's the snarky writer. He writes snappy, snarky dialogue for every character. That's a huge mistake because you need foils and you need all that.
Yeah.
But I love Joss Whedon's stuff. And if you go back and watch Buffy, it
holds up.
Serious darkness.
But that's
right. But that's his own property.
That works.
That's his own property.
Stuff.
In other words,
but you can't come in and write everybody with Tony Stark's voice like he did with Avengers. You can't write everybody with Tony Stark. It's annoying because everybody's trying to outquip each other.
Yeah.
That number one, that's a style. It's not realistic. It's a style. Right. It's theater, right? It's not. It doesn't sell the realism. And number two, I want to hear what Thor really is like. I want to hear what Captain America is really like. I don't want him to be cartoonish. And in other words, our point is not everybody's a comedian, nor should they be. You know, if you want to write a show where everybody's got a snarky line and can out-snark you, that's great because that's your thing. But that's not necessarily applicable to the Avengers.
Right. It's not. Well, I mean, look at Star Wars. The snarky one, the funny one was Han Solo.
Right.
And they stopped there.
Yeah,
right.
Imagine if Luke was trying.
Imagine everyone was Han Solo.
Yeah.
It'd get old. This is my biggest problem with Disney. They paint a broad. Again, it's creative properties created by businessmen, and they're not being creative, and they're not invoking any creativity into it. What sells? Oh, that humor sells. Let's double down on the humor, put more of that. Oh, that sells.
But where will they
go?
The
internet memes, they put the humor, they put all this stuff in there. It's what's popular on the charts on the internet that day, and they throw it in the movie.
Sounds like 90s comics.
They'll come to us and that runs dry.
This is the litmus test I always ask people about movies. When you think of Raiders of the Lost Ark, you can picture that storyline very well.
Yeah.
Get the Ark of the Covenant.
Yeah.
Do you remember the exact storyline of the last Avengers movie?
Yeah.
Does it get a little confusing? What about what about the Thor? Do you remember all the details, all the story, every detail? Does it get a little confusing?
Yeah.
I think hard enough.
Yeah, because they're not writers. They're putting stories and they're basically the story is there to sell a bunch of funny moments.
It's a series of vignettes.
I disagree. For this reason,
by this loose story. That's why the stories never hit and why you never care. This is why more people in the Marvel Universe care about the characters, not the story.
And yet,
they sell better.
How much money those movies have made.
It doesn't matter. Money.
Scorsese said,
money is the thing that gets me all the time to go, look how much money. It's like some of the greatest literature in human history has not made tons of money. And there's a reason why it's great literature.
Books. Think about this. Remember when Scorsese said that he didn't like Marvel movies because it was just like a roller coaster ride?
Yeah.
The problem with that statement is a roller coaster ride is 3 minutes long. If people really felt that way about Marvel movies, they wouldn't go and they wouldn't sell money. Now, think about this. When the Infinity War movie ended, people were crying. And I was like, What is wrong with you? You know those people are coming back. And yet, for some reason, they were touched in a way that was pretty stark. I remember when Civil War came out, and people were coming up to me and saying, "What did you think of this movie?" And I'm like, "Well, it was pretty cool." And they were like, "Yeah, but I don't really like about, you know, the idea of government interference." And suddenly we're talking about politics. I mean, the fact is, people they really resonate with these movies for some reason, and you can't just pin that on, well, because Tony Stark is funny.
You would not believe how many.
Let me ask you this: if an alien race came to the Earth and you were to present one movie that encapsulates the human race, would you show them a Marvel movie?
Not unless they wanted to laugh. Now, see, if they wanted to look into the grim, dark underbelly,
not even grim, dark. I'm not even talking grim, dark. That's not even the opposite.
No, I'm saying that's the cool part about Marvel is they have figured out how to do it one way.
They just tell the hero story over and over again. It's the exact same story over and over, except they add the current internet jokes. That's the formula. That's it. In a nutshell, it's been that
it's
way.
More than that, but I can see how you. I can see how you would see it that way.
2 cents from Rory. 2 cents.
When you talk about like they all have like the same personality, there is instances where that does happen. That's actually it's well documented. In the military, you're stuck with the same group of people for an extended period of time, heightened anxiety. You're surrounded by darkness and just doing so much stuff you don't want to do. You have no control of what's going on around you. Everybody, I don't know, it doesn't matter what personality you have, because there's like, 16, 18 personalities. I've seen everybody converge onto that same, like, everything is a joke. Everything is funny because it has to be, because it's a coping mechanism. So it all gets real dark. Like cemetery humor is a thing. So you start cracking jokes, and you could there's a mine there, and I'm on a giant metal ship. This is going to go great.
You know? Well, but that humor was more perfectly encapsulated with the second Alien film, Aliens. Mm-hmm. That fits.
Game over, man.
Yeah. Game over, man. Speaking of game over, kids.
Oh, Dad.
We've gone over. We had a good time.
Good segue. Good segue.
We're going to have a whole nother podcast on this.
We're going to do a whole nother
Silverline
podcast.
After Dark was continuing on after this.
We're going to have to do this, but we do like to close all of our broadcasts by our mantra, which is...
Make mine
Silverline.
Hi, my name is Sergio Cariello, and make mine Silverline.